Marketer of the Day, episode 539, Applied Creativity. Tap into unlimited great ideas on demand, change perspective, generate leads, and joint ventures with professional brainstormer, Don the Idea Guy.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. Now you are in for a real treat because we have as a special guest on the show, Don the Idea Guy, and he possesses creative powers beyond those of mere mortals. Don has sold, shared, and traded ideas with companies like Sears-Kenmore, Ford Motor Company, American Airlines, CocaCola, and Kellogg's, and he's the author of 100 What's of Creativity, which gives you 100 what-if questions designed to spark your creativity and solve your toughest challenges. So we're going to bounce some ideas off him, and we're going to find out what Don's all about. So glad to be talking to you, Don.
Hey, thanks for inviting me to the podcast, Robert.
Glad to have you. So yeah, you're the idea guy. Got any good ideas lately?
Always. There's always a good idea. What kind of ideas are you looking for, Robert? I'm happy to help.
I don't know. You tell me. I'm not really sure what I'm getting myself into. So do you have any thoughts in the last couple of weeks or anything specific on your mind?
That's probably the most fun I'm having right now is working on my daily content project, which is Big Yellow Sticky. I decided that much like your own philosophy of, you can start a podcast in an hour, write a book in 5 minutes kind of a thing. I firmly ascribe to those same beliefs that there's plenty of time for you to work on things. And I wanted to come up with a daily practice of creating content. And I figured the best way to assure myself of success was to come up with the smallest amount of content possible to create in a day. So I decided that even I could fill up a yellow sticky note every single day. So just this year, I started my 4th year of writing a daily 3x3 Big Yellow Sticky note on bigyellowsticky.com. So that's the kind of thing that is going through my mind lately is what am I going to write on that sticky note today?
And can you give us an example of what you've written lately or what you wrote on your sticky note today?
Well, I do them every day right before midnight. So the most recent one was yesterday. And a friend of mine has a website called Cups and Conversation where they are talking about sharing ideas and meeting new people and making connections over coffee. That's something I firmly believe in as well. I have a whole process around generating ideas over coffee that I call Brainstorming, but they just started a week of gratitude. So for the next week, my little yellow stickies are going to be about this gratitude challenge. So yesterday's was a statement that I was grateful for all my cool friends and all the amazing projects that they create.
All right. Well, awesome. So, when you say that you're the idea guy and you come up with these sticky notes, things like that, what's the point of all this stuff, right? It's one thing to have different ideas and thoughts and things like that, but how do we make sure that we're tuned into the right good ideas, and how do we make sure that we actually implement stuff?
Yeah, and that's the trick, right? Everybody has an idea. How do you decide which one's the best one?
Yeah.
Which ones are worth pursuing? So the whole past story, the secret origin of Don the Idea Guy, branched out from the fact that I was getting into a role that required sales, and I did not consider myself a salesperson, but I did like sharing ideas with people. So instead of making cold calls and asking them if they wanted to buy whatever service I was selling at that point, I decided I would just call people up and offer them ideas for using the service I was selling, which was printing and design services at that point. So instead of calling people up and asking them if they wanted to buy a brochure, I would find out that a company had an initiative to promote recycling and improving the environment. And I would reach out to them and say, hey, I see you print a lot of brochures, but you're not printing anything on recycled paper. Have you thought about doing that before? And the conversation would just branch out from there. The worst case scenario was they didn't like an idea I brought to them, but the best thing that came out of that is it was a real easy follow-up to say, well, hey, that idea didn't work for you. I'm going for quantity, not quality at this point. I don't know enough about you. What kind of ideas are you looking for? And that gave me another opportunity to come back to them with ideas that were more focused versus just trying to pick their brain and get information out of them that every other salesperson was trying to get out of them. I'd actually ask them what kind of ideas were they interested in, create custom concepts that would work for them in their environment and meet their needs instead of trying to sell the things I was trying to sell, and come back to them in a couple of weeks and sell them the things they were actually looking to buy.
And that is super awesome in a number of ways. Number one, like you said, you're not a natural salesperson, so that's your own unique way of getting attention and of getting the conversation started. And I noticed that like I sort of do something similar, not very often, but maybe every few months or so. I'd wake up and have like an idea for something, and usually it seems like it would be an idea for like someone else. Like it seems like it's easier for me to think of ideas for someone else who has a different business model or does some other service. It seems like easier for me to think of because I'm from the outside looking in. And up until maybe 6 to 12 months ago, up until that point, if I had an idea like that, I'd write it down or just forget about it. And now I've noticed that I've been using it myself just as a little bit of a joint venture, a little bit of attention getter there. Like I'd say like to someone like, well, someone who provides like services with websites, I'd say, well, why don't you go and set up this certain kind of website, because I don't have a use for that, but just because I was thinking about that, I might as well pass the idea along to you. And when you were listing out, like you said a couple of like different examples so far, and what you're making me think of is that a lot of the times when I come up with like ideas for myself, they're either like combining two things together or I'm absorbing something from someone else's business model. So what you're making me think of is like me and my business partner have a course about membership sites, and then we also sell a backup plugin for WordPress. And then at one point a couple of years ago, I was just walking around in this like huge park near me in nature, and I thought, well, why don't I just combine that and we sell this course now with these already ready-made kind of like backup clones as part of the course. And then something that I'm seeing a lot lately with especially like software out there is that a lot of these guys will sell software, whether it's like a graphic creator, video creator, whatever, they'll include like hundreds of templates in there. So that's the thing I kind of have picked up recently, is to sell something with just a ton of templates. That way someone can kind of click around. So do you sort of think of your ideas in a similar way? Like, are there like subcategories of ideas or different types, sort of like how like sometimes you combine or sometimes you absorb from something else?
Yeah, you touched on a lot of really important points there. I want to go back real quick. When you said you come up with ideas, frequently you find they're for other people and not for yourself. I think that we are our own worst clients, creative people are, and we're always better at coming up with ideas for other people. So I absolutely agree with you on that point and experience it myself. The other thing that you brought up was you'll contact those people and give them those ideas. So that's a way to stay in touch with your existing clients, is if you are working with people who, you mentioned membership websites. If you're working with people who have membership websites, you will naturally come up with ideas to help solve their problems. And that's a way to maintain contact with them, generate ideas for new products that you can sell to them, and to go after other people that might make good customers who don't know you yet. Because if you see somebody online who has a website that's not taking advantage of a membership platform, it's easier for you to reach out to them and say, hey, I've got an idea for you. You've got this great content out there. Have you thought about doing a membership website before? And just reaching out so that they hear that you actually paid attention to what they were working on and gave them an example of how they can apply what they do in the context of what you offer. To me, that's applied creativity. And I think that the opportunities for that are endless. The more people you meet, the more things that you find out about them, the better, and more ideas that you can come up with for them. I'm sure you found that to be true as well.
Yeah, it's like once you start it, it's hard to slow it down. And so do you have any sort of like a process? Like, are you looking for yourself like X number of ideas per week, or are you looking to like meet some sort of quota as far as reaching out in this way? Or is it a matter of just whenever the ideas come to you?
Right. So a mixture of both. I have an active practice where I'm kind of a professional brainstormer. So people will hire me for an hour or 2 hours to come up with ideas to either solve a specific problem or to come up with concepts in general for projects they might be working on. I do things called creativity on call, which somebody can call me up on the phone. We do a per minute piece, or I do more formal beanstorms where we get together over coffee, whether virtually or in real life, And over the course of a couple of cups, we can come up with marketing plans for them, develop new ideas for products. Most recently, I'm working a lot with helping people put their ideas into action. So it might be coming up with steps that they can take now to put an idea they have out into the real world and start earning their first dollars from it.
Well, great. Well, now you've piqued my curiosity a little bit. So do you have any stories like this, either of, like you said, either the like coming up with the creative ideas or in putting them in the steps? Do you have any interesting stories like that where like you met with some client and they were stuck or just weren't sure and then you kind of worked your magic? Anything like that come to mind?
Sure. So a couple instances, it's a matter of getting people to change their perspective on what it takes to put that idea into action. So I had one client who wanted to start a podcast, but thought they needed an expensive microphone to do it, that they needed a new laptop, that they had to hire audio production and buy software. I said, no, man, you just get in your car, turn on your phone and just hit record. And there's any number of apps out there that you can use for it. I always recommend Spreaker because in my process of telling people what they can do to put these things into action, I need to show that I'm doing that as well. So to prove the theory, I did a series of 50 consecutive podcasts from the front seat of my car in the parking lot every day before I walked into my office. Your car provides for an amazing recording studio. The audio actually sounds really good in there. I was using a $20 wireless headset, just a Bluetooth headset, and the app on my phone, and produced probably 3 or 4 podcasts and found my first sponsor, which was great because it was a coffee company. So I had a coffee company sponsoring a podcast about coming up with ideas over coffee. But that gives me the experience and the proof of concept to talk to my clients about that they don't need to invest in all this setup time, which tend to just be excuses to not put their idea into action and to just move forward with it and start those things.
I love it. And I'm of a similar mindset in that I'm all about like whatever tool there is, I'm all about using that thing hundreds of times. You know, like you're making me think about the first time that I discovered screen capture recording software like Camtasia Recorder, and I use that. I mean, I'm using that thing right now to record this podcast. And like I use that, you know, I started using that thing every single day. I'd use it to record like quick YouTube tutorials. I'd use it to reach out to people. I'd use it if I had some tech support issue to explain my problem. I use it to create products. I'm just like, okay, I've got this piece of software that I'm sure many people have barely fired up. I'm gonna wear that thing out to the ground. But so you mentioned something in there that like, okay, so a lot of people that you work with, they come across these sort of mental blocks and they say that, well, I'm going to let this one little technical detail or this one little decision hold me up. And you're all about proof of concept, and you're all about like, you know, using it and showing that it can be done. So what you're making me think of here is it seems like I've come across this too, where if I'm trying to convince someone of some sort of an idea, not even like a sale, but even just like to take some sort of action, it seems like they get practical like really quickly. You know what I'm saying? Like I say like, well, let's make a software as a service and host some stuff, and they say, well, what's the hosting costs going to be on that? And I'm thinking, right, well, why can't we just get the big idea done with and then deal with the little problems afterwards? So like, do you come across this, and is there an easy solution to maybe getting the practicality out of the way, that way we can see these ideas through?
Yeah, and what you're describing is a common problem. I think that you have a couple things that come into play. One, it's fun to dream. It's fun to think about what could be, and it's fun to think about how big an idea could get, and to see the end result of how successful you are sitting on a beach someplace, raking in the dough from whatever project you put into action, or some product that you came up with and some larger company bought it from you. That's a lot of fun to think about that, and that sparks your creativity, and that lets your imagination run wild, and you should not deny yourself those opportunities. But if you're serious about wanting to begin something and you want to take it to fruition, you have to get serious about putting it into action. And it's never perfect. I think the guys who founded LinkedIn said, if you're not embarrassed by the first iteration of your product, then you launched too late. You waited too long. And Seth Godin's got a great line about, it doesn't matter what pencil Stephen King uses. he's writing. It doesn't matter what pencil he's using. It doesn't matter what pencil you use. It doesn't matter what podcast software you use. It doesn't matter what phone you're using. It doesn't matter if you're Mac or PC. The important thing is that you're launching your idea in some minimal format to get it out there, to begin raising awareness of it, so you have people start paying attention to it, to take notice of it, to ask you more about it. And those are the important things. One of my consulting clients, he runs a podcast consulting company. And one of the things that he identified as a problem from his clients was getting reviews on iTunes. You know, you're a podcaster, you want to get as many reviews on iTunes as you can, right?
Right.
But it's tough to get people to load iTunes. iTunes is a memory hog. It takes forever to load. And if you're on a PC, oh man, that's really a pain. But it matters that you get those reviews on there. And the problem that a lot of his folks were coming into was just asking for a review wasn't enough. You needed to show people how to review you, what links to click and what button to push, and how do I know when I left a review? What's a good review? So just over a cup of coffee, we came up with a concept called Please Review My Podcast. And that could have easily stretched out into how do you build the software for that? You know, what can we do to make the hot links live and into iTunes? And instead of doing that, we set it up just as a landing page. It was a simple landing page on a WordPress platform where you did screenshots of that podcaster's podcast page on iTunes. You had arrows pointing to what button to click and where to enter your information. And then it was a link out to their podcast on that page. That was a down and dirty weekend project, but he's already got about a dozen clients who are paying him either an annual fee or a lifetime fee to get a page on pleasereviewmypodcast.com.
Super awesome. So it sounds like in that case, it was a matter of like bridging the gap, and like lately, for some reason, Uber's been on my mind lately, just as far as like the simplicity and at the same time the genius of that, right? Like you figure, like even a couple of years ago when you wanted to get a taxi cab, you'd have to go online and look up a phone number and call some kind of thing and tell them where you were and wait an hour and they come find you. And then versus Uber, it's like you just hit the button. So it seems like that's quite like a fertile, like I guess, ground there to get new ideas from, is just figuring out, well, where is the process broken, or what's something that maybe should be easy right now and we have the technology for but isn't, and like maybe like remove steps. So maybe sometimes the good ideas are from the ones where it's like, what can we take away, what steps can we remove to make this process easier?
Right. So Uber's a great example because it's out there now and people can look at Uber and maybe they're listening to what you're saying now and are telling themselves, yeah, but look how much funding Uber had and look at the app, how much did that app cost to produce? And then you're linking it up to all these drivers and you had to get those drivers in. No, at its simplest form, Uber was a way to request a ride in a non-traditional way. So if you have an idea, let's just pre-Uber, and you have this idea to offer a service separate and apart from a taxi cab, you could have, in its most minimal version, you could have created a practice, a business from this by utilizing a free Google phone number. You could use, there are several phone apps that allow you to create a virtual number, and you can actually use it to send text messages. I know one of them is called Hush, where I think a lot of websites are selling lifetime access to one of these things for $25, where you get a number that's not your phone number, so you can use it as your business number. You can send text to it. So it would be something easy if I was going to start that business and I knew that you frequently flew on airplanes out to speaking gigs, Robert, and you and I are friends. And I go, hey, I'm thinking about starting this business where instead of calling a cab, you could just let me know that you needed a ride to an airport. So next time you need a ride, instead of calling a cab, call this number or text me when you need to be there, and I'll show up and pick you up and take you there. At its most minimal form, you could have done that. And then you get, maybe your feedback is, hey, that's a good idea. I would like to do that in my spare time. Great. I'm going to text you the next time I have a pickup. You let me know when you're available, and we can do it that way. It didn't require me building a new app. It required me talking to a couple of friends who might have a need for this service and coming up with a down and dirty way to execute.
I love it. There's your proof of concept idea all over again. Like it's you don't waste time or don't put in unnecessary work up front creating some kind of fancy software. If it can be done sort of almost manually, then at least prove that it can be done. So that way you can sort of do it the hard way and then find out that there's demand and then scale later.
Yeah, I mean, why invest the time and money if you're not even sure the world is going to like that idea yet? It's a chance to earn your first buck. I could have charged you $10 for that ride, and you're like, wow, that was horrible. You weren't available when I needed you, and that was a problem. So maybe I don't take that idea further, or I say, wow, I need to get 2 or 3, 4 or 5 people on this helping me out at the same time. It'll allow you to problem solve as you go, so you're not building a solution that you find out later wasn't solving a real problem, where there was another problem that you didn't incorporate a solution into that app for. And if you were going to go and pitch this to an investor, you could say, I've got 5 to 10 drivers who are on and off this thing part-time. I've earned, I don't know, $5,000 over the course of the year. I think this idea has legs and I want to move forward with it. Do you agree?
Right. Super awesome. You sort of figure it out as you go along. And that idea really resonates with me quite a bit because like I do software, and as you know, many of the ideas that excite you don't excite other people. So sometimes you have to put out these little tiny experiments and then see what gets traction. And then as it gets more usage, then you build what the buyers, what the users want, as opposed to what you think is cool, because those things might not exactly match up there. And then you're even reminding me of what there's like some other ride sharing app called like Arcade City, where they don't even handle the payment stuff. It's just a matter of like someone can get a cab, they pick someone up, they take them where they go, and then they kind of handle the money if it's like through cash or whatever, which like at first I thought sounded like a silly idea, but you think about it, okay, well they're just going with that minimum viable product there and then building from there. So speaking of like proving that something can be done and proving that it can be done easily, I gotta know, how the heck did you get a sponsor for this idea podcast? Was it just like something that came to you, or did you go out and do it, or like what happened there?
So I'm a huge fan of coffee. Like I said, I have direct tie. I personally draw direct ties between caffeine and creativity. So when I was launching my podcast, my radar is up for other people who are launching things. And I saw there was another company that was launching a subscription coffee service. So I reached out to them and said, hey, I just launched a podcast. I saw you were launching a new coffee business. Why don't we kind of launch together and give co-promotion for each other? So 3 episodes in, I was promoting this company in the podcast.
So what's the lesson there? Is that just a matter of like keep your radar up, as you said, or is the lesson like to, if you're reaching out to different people and companies for whatever reason, to maybe like personalize it, and so that, because it's not like you just sent them a mass email. You said, well, I noticed that specifically about your company, you guys are starting up, I'm starting up too. So I mean, like, I guess what's the lesson to be learned there? So
don't be afraid to ask is the primary lesson. The other is don't call people up and pitch them something. Call and share an idea. I didn't call and say, hey, here's my PDF of a sponsorship platform, 1 of 3 levels. Would love to have you as a sponsor. I just need a deposit and give me your credit card number. I reached out to a human being who had tweeted about their new service that they were selling, said I thought it was a neat idea. I was launching something else. Did they see a connection here? Did they see an overlap? And they did. It was a conversation that led to a business connection. I didn't lead with business. I didn't know them. They didn't know me. You have to have that conversation first. I would say if you're calling somebody up purely to pitch them something that benefits you, to think twice about that. You should know enough about what their goals are just by virtue of their social media footprint, by their website About Us page, by their LinkedIn posts. You should know enough about what they're trying to accomplish to customize your conversation around what they're trying to accomplish. Yes, you hope to benefit by it as well, but I also would have been the first person to say, if they wrote back and said, hey, podcasting really isn't a focus for us. We're really focused on growing our base. I may have introduced them to somebody who had a a podcast that had been around longer, or a blog that focused on coffee reviews, because it's all about making the connection. It's the power of your contact list. If I can connect you to somebody else, then you see me as a resource rather than somebody who just tried to hawk a sponsorship on a podcast that probably had 3 listeners, and one of them was probably my mother at that point.
Right, super funny. And I mean, there's definitely been people, again, my podcasting adventures, who have done exactly what you said there, where like they've been connectors, and they've been more interested in putting it out there, paying it forward, helping other people, knowing that even if only a tiny percentage comes back to them, then they'll be just fine. And so what you're also making me think of is I got started with all this internet marketing stuff age like 17, age 18. And when I was age 15, age 16, I had the chance to basically, I had figured out how to make like a 360-degree panoramic image for part of a school project. And I was looking into, and I was talking to a couple of realtors to shoot. And this was like the year like 1999 or 2000 to shoot for these people, like this panoramic image for real estate listings. And I didn't realize back then like what a gold mine that was, and I was kind of an idiot since I was just a teenage kid. I went and I let my insecurity get the best of me, and I created one of those big long, not big long, but 5 to 10 page PDF document with all this fancy stuff, and then I ended up not even shopping it out to any of those local realtors, when I should have just picked up the phone or showed up or just done something more casual like you described, and not let the formalities get in the way there.
Right. So, I mean, you were focused on, as many people are, creating that perfect proposal, that PDF proposal. And by that time, you're exhausted. Like, how much time and energy did you spend on creating that PDF?
Who knows? Probably a couple weeks.
Whereas you could have visited any realtor website, or just driven down the street to see the yard signs that are out there that said there's an open house this weekend, and just showed up at the open house. Asked them if they wanted you to take a free panoramic view of the living room, just to see if they like it, and you could have done a free demo there. Whether it was right before the open house started, or you came back late after it ended, so that there weren't people walking around to interrupt your shot. But there's any other variation on that concept where you just show up. Hey, can I do this shot for you to show you what I'm talking about? Wow, I love that. I've got 5 other houses I'm listing this weekend. Can you come out and shoot the other ones?
Yeah, I mean, and that sort of applies to all the kind of sub-concepts you were talking there, as far as like keep it super simple, keep it super quick, and then also it's like there's a little, if you can show up and do it in right then and there in a couple of minutes, that's a great demo. I mean, and that way that's something to really wow them, as opposed to saying, well, I can do this for you. Like, why not actually do it for them if it only takes a couple of minutes?
Yeah, and nothing's going to speak stronger than that demo. If I can see what you do in regards to how I can benefit from it, then it was a good conversation. But I don't want to have to do homework. I don't want to have to read your textbook that you sent to me that clogged up my inbox, and I really didn't want to. I'll read your 12-page PDF when I get around to it. Or reading just a 1-page proposal. Until I know how it benefits me, until I know you can do what you said you're going to do, I don't want to be sold. I don't even know if I want to buy from you yet, and you're trying to sell me something.
Yeah, I mean, you're making. I mean, no, you really are the idea guy. You're making all kinds of light bulbs go off, and what you're thinking about, make me think about now. Like fast forward, 15 years here is now I'm thinking, okay, well, now that I'm in this niche of membership sites, what I should be doing now is figure out a way in a couple of clicks to get some kind of mock-up or a demo of membership site, or like of someone's membership site or a course or something. That way, I can go to people who don't have membership sites and say, look at what I built for you, or look at what we could have, and make a whole like dashboard and a whole thing that they can like click on and log into, and just figure out how to do it really quick, so that way they just
and Robert, I would say that it doesn't even have to be functional. I mean, it can just be a screenshot. The power of a prototype is amazing. If I can see what you're trying to describe to me, even if it's not functional, to be able to go to somebody's website, again, we'll use your example, the membership site. If you go to someone's website and you find something that you think fits the membership model perfectly, you can do a screen grab of that content, put it behind in a browser window as just a screenshot and show them what that might look like. They would click this button, it would get them to this page. Here's where it collects the money, and presto, they get your valuable content.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally going to set something like that up. And so as we're beginning to wind down here, like you've come across and thought of all these different ideas during your career. Would you say, like, is there one that's just like really, really good, really high up there? Is there like a number one best idea you think you've ever had, or is that not really a fair question?
I have favorites of the moment. There's always the one that didn't sell that you really thought was a good idea. I did a brainstorm session with a toaster pastry company that was interested in expanding beyond their customer perceptions as a breakfast snack. And they had an idea to do cookies in the toaster. And during that session, I'd come up with the idea for abandoning the cookie concept, which they were really in love with, and they wanted to do that. But my concept was hot pretzels. I thought the hot pretzel in a toaster would be awesome, because then instead of the frosting, you could put mustard on it if you wanted to, little packets of mustard. Instead of the fruit fillings, you could have cheese in them. Think about combos meets toaster pastries, right?
Yeah.
So I thought this was this brilliant concept that they were just going to gobble up, pun intended. But it didn't. It just kind of died on the vine. And that was sad, because I really liked that idea a lot and still do.
And who knows, maybe because you thought of that, maybe in the future that will trigger something new, or maybe you'll have a chance to circle back around to that or apply it somewhere else or something.
Oh, yeah. I would love to get back in front of them again and pitch that exact same idea, just because I still think it works. But, you're always going to have favorite ideas, but you want to make sure that you don't fall in love with that idea so much that you can't think of anything else. I tell people I come up with a lot of good ideas because I come up with a lot of bad ideas. And the trick is to get the bad ideas out just as fast as the good ideas to make room for more good ideas. Advice to your audience when they're brainstorming on pieces is, when you're feeling that flow, that brainstorm, to keep scribbling those ideas down. Always capture them. I'm sure you've run into this before, that you come up with an idea in the middle of the night and you're like, oh, well, I'll remember it in the morning. And then you did not remember it in the morning. You got to keep something nearby to write ideas down on, whether it's physical pencil and paper or you're recording audio into your phone. You got to capture the ideas when they pop into your head. And one idea will help you come up with the next idea, which will build onto the next idea. So when you get in that zone where you're just kind of crushing a list of ideas, keep scribbling them down and keep going until you're burnt, basically, because you don't know when you're going to get that inspiration back again. I will say that if you leave off before you get all the ideas out of your head, but you remember where to pick up next time, a lot of writers use that trick when they're writing a book. They'll stop when they still have the next sentence in their head, because they know where they're going to pick up next time, and it makes it easier to start the flow again at the next session.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I agree with all that completely, especially like have a place to write it down, whether it's a piece like a little notebook in your pocket, or like tapping it out on an Evernote app on your phone. Yep. And then also just that whole idea of like, there's the idea muscle. And if you don't exercise it, well, then it's going to be hard to do the real work. But if you're always just in the habit of letting the ideas flow and writing stuff down, then they'll always be coming by to you. And just that whole idea of like, you have to write down a lot of the bad ideas to get to the good ones. It seems like whenever I'm like writing a book or like brainstorming blog posts or something, it's like I have to write down maybe like the first 5 or so ideas will be just okay, and then ideas like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 will be really crappy, but then ideas 11, 12, 13 were like really good, and I had to go through the bad to get to the good. So I mean, this is all really great stuff here.
And then also think about where else you can apply the idea you came up with. So you described your panoramic photo business, right? So you thought of realtors first. That's a great matchup. But who else would need that service that you could customize this proposal for? So people who build buildings, so construction companies, Architects might want to have that. What about retail stores? Maybe it's a picture of the inside of a store that they can put on their website or put on their brochures. Or
Airbnb users.
Airbnb users. What about tourist destinations? So it might be national parks or history museums or art museums. That same idea, that same concept could be applied in a dozen different ways, and you could create little side branded businesses off your core real estate panoramic photos to do all these other services as well.
I love it. So pursue the low-hanging fruit and see if you can apply the same skill other places where it's tweaked, it's customized a little bit, but it's like, used in all these specialized areas. Well, I love it. And so as we're kind of beginning to wrap things up here, can you tell us about where people can find out about you and what you have going on? Like, I know you have the 100 watts of creativity. I'm curious to hear about that, along with whatever else you have for us.
Sure. So the easiest and best place to find out about me and whatever current projects I'm working on is on my primary website, which is dontheideaguy.com. It is me, and it is my website. The other projects I might be interested in is anybody listening to the podcast is welcome to read 100 Watts of Creativity for free. You can go to 100wattsbook.com, and Watts is WHATS, because it's 100 what if questions. And there's an embedded copy of the book there that they're welcome to read. I've had people tell me they came up with the idea for their next project just a few pages into it. It's been used in creative writing courses. It's been used in engineering classes. It's just a great way to develop an idea that might already be in your head and flesh it out more fully. So, and then Big Yellow Sticky. That's my fun project that there's something new there every day. It's bigyellowsticky.com. But the best place to start, dontheideaguy.com.
Super great. So just to recap there, we have dontheideaguy.com. That's the main site. bigyellowsticky.com. That's the daily idea site. And then 100wattsbook.com. And on that 100 Watts book, can you give us a little bit of a taste of like one of the 100 just to kind of whet our appetite and have people running over to grab that book?
Yeah, sure. So it's the concept is there are what if questions that you would add on to your idea. So number 3 is what if it was smaller? So a lot of people have these gigantic, grandiose ideas, but what if they made them smaller? So the page in 100 Watts says, what if it was smaller? Make dishes smaller to have portions appear larger. It would be a great idea for a restaurant. Or smaller credit cards that could fit on your watch for easy scanning. Think about how this book was written a while ago. It was before the iWatch. So I'm ahead of my time here. And then make skyscrapers smaller for interior decor, like the Empire State Building in your living room, or smaller phones that take up less space on your desk. Or what if pets were made smaller to better fit in these minimalist homes? What if pens were smaller to fit behind your ear easier? There's just these what if, it's just filled with what if questions. So what if it was bigger? What if it was thinner? What if it was taller? So it's filled with those and a bunch of probably about a dozen or so original quotes for me to help you think about your ideas in different ways.
Super cool. Well, now I'm definitely going to have to grab that. It sounds like a great way to get that kind of outside perspective and look at things in a different way. So that way we can figure out what we really want and figure out what's that big hot idea that will make us a bunch of money next. So once again, just to make go ahead.
If it was something you were just kind of stumped on, you can work your way through the book 1 to 100. But I think it's more fun to open up to a random page and just pick it up from there.
Super cool. So dontheideaguy.com, 100wattsbook.com, and then bigyellowsticky.com. So if you out there are stuck with ideas, or you wish that you could be a more creative person, or you even just want to think of ideas for others, that way you can kind of jumpstart this joint venture process with other people that you want to work with, then you're going to want to check out Don's website. You're going to want to listen to our interview together again and again. So dontheideaguy.com, and we'll see you there. And thanks so much, Don, for stopping by and just blowing our minds with new ways of thinking and acting. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Robert. It was a pleasure to be on the podcast.
Same here. If you're a future podcaster, new podcaster, existing podcaster, or you're looking to make more money with your podcast with less time, you owe it to yourself to check out doneforyoupodcasting.com. We handle any or all of your podcasting needs. Go to doneforyoupodcasting.com